Nuclear stocks have been on a downward spiral for months now, but have they finally hit a bottom? MarketBeat's Neal Johnson joins us with a list of 5 nuclear stocks he considers generational wealth buying opportunities right now. Jeffrey, from the more speculative names in nuclear to those solid companies that have real revenue already coming in, you have been bullish on the entire nuclear story for quite a while now, but it's been quite bearish for the last few months, really since the start of the year especially.
Yeah, it really has, but it doesn't change the fundamental case, right? So the negative sentiment that's being thrown around due to the geopolitical tension that's going on and due to the AI thesis kind of collapsing a little bit here and there, it doesn't change the fact that nuclear energy is the way of the future. It doesn't change the fact that the electrical grid is failing. It doesn't change the fact that we're going to the electrification of everything. It becomes a situation where you start to wonder, is it easier to build the future than it is to rebuild the past?
Building the future definitely comes with some risks, though. I think this is the one area. The future means uncertainty. We don't know what building the future looks like. We do know what building the past looks like. And I think that's where investors definitely get caught up on looking at nuclear stocks, so especially some of the ones we're going to talk about today, as riskier speculative investments because it is new. It's something we haven't, that's not proven yet. It's not even fully functional yet. And that is why we're seeing tons of volatility. So as we get into this list today, we're starting with the most volatile way to look at investing in nuclear and building our way down to more of the steady, stable ways to look at nuclear investing right now. But all of these stocks, all 5 of the names we're going to cover today, are names that you are bullish on for future growth ahead. So let's get started with the most controversial look at nuclear investing, and that's the small nuclear reactors. What's your thought on this first stock?
Okay, so the first stock that we're going to talk about is Oklo, and they're an $8.5 billion venture stage company. They're developing specialized microreactors. Okay, so a microreactor is actually smaller than an SMR, and these microreactors will be deployed on actual like data center sites. The microreactor technology, I think, is something that you can be so very bullish on because it's meant to replace the fossil fuel generators that are currently sitting outside of call centers and outside of AI data centers. And if you look at the AI data center situation, one of the biggest complaints about an AI data center being stuck in your backyard is the amount of noise and the amount of pollution that they produce because they have to generate their own power.
So Oklo has had one of those charts that's just been falling and falling and falling. It was such a hot stock last year. It was up at its new highs, rapid growth, and now it's fallen just as fast. What will it take to see a turnaround in Oklo stock?
Oklo is still struggling to get their designs squared away. There's still a venture. I mean, it's still a venture. It's still a guess as to whether or not they'll actually hit the ground running or not, right? And so I think that solid news on progress from these guys would give this stock a nice bump, right? And it's been a while since we've heard solid progress from them. And so you would think that it won't be very long before they actually come out with something. I mean, you can't keep your tongue tied for that long, right? I feel like as soon as they come out with news, it'll start climbing back up.
Let's talk about the second stock on your list, which is a fierce neck and neck competitor with Oklo right now.
Yeah, I feel like they're pretty fierce neck and neck competitors. When you look at their charts, they seem to travel up and down at the same time, together. And that's New Scale SMR. I talk about them all the time. There might be some flack because, that stock it was 50 or $60 last year, and now we're down to like $10. But that doesn't change anything. They still have their research going on with the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and those are the people that created the nuclear industry in the United States. So for them to have a partnership and for them to be doing research with Oak Ridge National Laboratories, that says something huge about where they're going. They have a certified microreactor, or they have a certified small modular reactor design. And then you also have SMR's partnership with Intra One for the state of Tennessee, which is my state, and the power company TVA, which is my power company. This power company is going to be buying like 10 SMR units to install into the grid to help reinforce the way that they're getting power now, right?
I feel like we had a very similar conversation back around Christmas when SMR made your list of top stocks to watch in 2026. At that time, you were talking about it being in a downtrend and being a good time to buy. I added it to my Bridget Spies watch list. You can follow that by going to marketbeat.com/Bridget or scan the QR code to follow along with these stocks. This one in particular has been a really rough one. It's down almost 30% since I added it to my watch list back just after Christmas. And I think that's the fear a lot of retail investors have looking at this name. Oklo's same story is we thought it was low then and it's continued to drop. So could it fall even further from here? Or it's so pre-revenue, so early right now. Could these companies fold altogether?
Both of these stocks have been really, really badly beaten down. And I think it's getting very close to the floor, right? Because there's institutional buys in these, there's investment buys in these. I think that it's just going to be a matter of time, right? As, for instance, they get closer to their commercialization timeline and people see the grid continuing to degrade as the AI data centers continue to come online. It's one of those things that if you believe in the nuclear thesis and you believe that the grid is struggling and you believe that that the AI thesis is going to continue to advance, nuclear is really the only way to go. And the nuclear sector has been pushed down so far that it almost creates like a generational wealth buying opportunity if you can find your entry point and the place that makes you feel comfortable when you make your investment.
A decent entry point with a stock that's been driven down so low right now. But again, risk is very much there. You look at the earnings report for SMR this last season, it was a huge money drain again. And so there's absolute risk associated with both of the names that we just talked about. So do your own research, do some diving into that to see if this is an area of risk in a nuclear investment that you feel comfortable with. Let's move on to more of that solid name in nuclear. And this is a stock that's also been driven down the last few
Yeah,
weeks.
so the one we're talking about is Constellation Energy. They are the nuclear power player. When it comes to the energy companies that you can invest in that are producing using nuclear, Constellation is the one to go with. I feel like it trades more like a tech stock than it does an energy stock. And that's one of the reasons that I like this stock so much because it is so tied into the nuclear thesis, which I'm such a bull on, and it's also tied into the AI data thesis, which I'm also such a bull on, right? They're the one that bought the 3 Mile Island reactor and they're trying to spin it back up for Meta. And, if you think about that, that's going to be the first restart of a major nuclear site ever in United States history, right? And so if the energy grid needs power so badly, right, that they're willing to restart dead reactors, then it becomes a situation where looking further down the road, the other players on this list make so much sense, right? And even Constellation still makes sense because, like I said, it trades like a tech stock, even though it's sitting at the top. I feel like there's so much room for Constellation to grow still at this point.
And I think analysts show that too. If you look at the consensus price target for this one, it looks like there's quite a bit of upside from where it's at right now. If you look at the higher end, it has even more upside to go. And there's some other fundamentals about Constellation that make this a much safer way at investing in nuclear, at less risk anyway. The earnings for Constellation look very strong in the most recent earnings report. So there's money coming in from the operations it already has underway and money to help support the investment that this company is making in building out that new, nuclear island that you were just talking about. So this one feels like it carries some of that growth potential with the future investment and development in nuclear, but it also has some of the income to support that growth right now. Is that a good case for Constellation? Talk about the fundamentals a little bit more and why this one might be a safer way of looking at nuclear.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a safer way to look at nuclear. I know that they're down something like 21% over the last 90 days. And just like with all the other stocks on this list, yes, they are down, but the fundamental drivers in the nuclear sector and for each one of these stocks has not changed. They are not down because of some sort of massive failing on their part. They're down because the market is down. So this creates an opening. Scotia Bank for Constellation, they have a $481 price target. and that's a pretty big jump from where we currently are. When you're talking about the fundamentals, they have major purchasing agreements, major PPA agreements across the board with a lot of the big players in the AI realm. The stock has had a phenomenal run. I don't see the case for this stock changing anytime soon.
Let's move on to the fourth stock. And this is one of those rare names in this list of five that we're looking at that isn't actually down much right now. In fact, it's towards the top of its 52-week range, but you are still bullish on some future growth for this name. So let's get into stock number four on your list of nuclear stocks to look at right now.
Number four stock is BWX Technologies, and their symbol's BWXT. I've talked about them before. I call them the Home Depot of the nuclear sector. Okay. The reason that they are up currently is that these guys make all the reactors for all the Navy vessels. So all the submarines, all the aircraft carriers, anything in the United States Navy that runs on nuclear power. But then you go to the other side of their business and you start looking at, for instance, their partnership with NewScale, SMR, to provide the parts that they need to build out their small modular reactor. So they become kind of like the Home Depot of the nuclear sector when they start selling the individual pieces that Oklo might need for their microreactors, the NewScale might need for their small modular reactors. That is where the money is for that stock. And while they're up a little bit over the last couple of days, it doesn't change the fact that they are now entering into a whole new segment, right? As the SMR market takes off, as the microreactor market takes off, as big players start bringing old legacy reactors back online or building new reactors from scratch, they're going to need the parts that BWX sells. And so while they're kind of priced for perfection right now, the line will move very quickly when they start actually building production models. BWX is going to benefit from that because the parts for these production models are going to be bought from them.
Yeah, this is absolutely a stock for people who are more momentum investors who like to look at the stocks that are really on a run up right now, that have that strong momentum going for them. You look at their earnings report, a lot of success, institutional ownership, almost 95% institutional ownership. So you can see a lot of the smart money is absolutely looking here as an investment for nuclear. If you'd like to follow along with what other big institutions are doing in the market right now, make sure to check out this free article on the top 5 market ranked stocks on MarketBeat. They're all backed by analysts and those big institutions. You can scan the QR code or click the link in the description to get that free report right now on marketbeat.com. All right, Jeffrey, let's move on to the fifth stock on your list. And this is taking us to an entirely different area of the nuclear sector.
The last stock that we're going to be looking at is Kamiko, and that's the mining, right? So we've talked about the really speculative plays. We've talked about the producers that are currently producing. We've talked about, the parts bin for all of these players. But the one thing that's missing from this is the actual fuel. While I am a nuclear bull, I am not a mining bull. I am not a big fan of the mining sector. So the only stock in the mining sector that I would touch would be Kamiko. And I would do that because they have strong earnings. They have their recent Westinghouse acquisition behind them, and they're in the process of restarting key assets for development. So when you look at the diversity that they have, they're not just a mine, right? Because of the Westinghouse acquisition and other things that they have going on, they're a little bit more diversified than a pure mining play. You don't really want to mess with mines that are in the process of being spun up, mines that could possibly be flooded, mines that could possibly be shuttered due to geopolitical tensions. And so when you look at a mining play, Kamiko is probably the only one that I would touch because they are domestic here on the North American continent. They are diversified through their Westinghouse acquisition. Other than Kamiko, the only thing that I would touch in the mining sector are diversified mining ETFs.
All right, interesting, Jeffrey. You are in the risk when it comes to some of these small nuclear reactors, but not in the risk when you're looking at nuclear mining stocks. Good to know. Also, I think CCJ is a good look right now, even for people who are looking for growth. It's a solid company. Like you said, it has a lot of good earnings right now, but it also has some upside. Right now, even at consensus price target, it's looking at over 30% upside on the stock with some other higher price targets. So, do you see this still as a growth story, even though it's maybe more of a solid company to look at?
I absolutely see this as a growth story because, they are restarting tier one assets like MacArthur River and bringing it up to full production. The consensus moderate buy that implies 30 to 40% upside is great. But then you start looking at, for instance, the Canadian Imperial Bank, who has set their price target at 202. That's even more upside there. When you look at them restarting key assets, you look at them building out their Westinghouse acquisition, and you look at the nuclear thesis in general and the need for fuel, right? All these small modular reactors, micro reactors, 3 Mile Island restarts, all that's going to require fuel. I still think that they have plenty of room to go.
All right, Jeffrey, thank you so much for diving into the nuclear energy field right now. If you're looking for other names in energy to look at right now, other than nuclear, make sure to look at this list of 3 stocks that are the top energy buys for 2026. You can find that video here.